So it's meant to be spring in Australia, Melbourne, but yet, I mean, at least me anyway, I'm wearing this. And Taryn is wearing,
some spring
spring-related attire.
It's a cold spring day, but we're still getting hay fever, so worst of both worlds.
And this is Melbourne, Australia. And hello, welcome to Top 10 two-player games to play in 2024 and 2025. I'm Stella.
And I'm Tarrant.
From Meeple University. Welcome to this video. I assume you play a lot of two-player games and you want to find out what's a new one, what's a good one that's coming out, because I play a lot of two players. So these games are the ones that play exclusively two players or two players with, 3 or 4 players variant, but they are just two-player games. So they maximize and they build the design for two players.
Yes.
So what you expect in this video is we're going to give you a quick overview of what the mechanics are, how the game plays, what to expect of the game, and then why this is the game for you.
So there were a lot of two-player releases at Essen this year. Two-player games in the modern hobby space seem to be... They seem to be in. They seem to be making a big...
But I'm cold.
Big little comeback at the moment. Lots of two-player versions of games which were popular over the last few years, and a number which are just new and designed for two players. And I do feel like it's more than there have been in recent years.
Exactly. So what makes a good two-player game, Tarrant?
There's a very clear difference, I think, between a game that you can see has been designed for two players specifically versus one that's come for a higher player count. And so much of it is in the direct interaction between the players. You can always see in a modern game that's been designed for two players that your decision has a more direct impact on the options of the other
player.
And when you've got that higher player count game, it can go a lot more into that multiplayer solitaire sort of thing. And when you get something two players, it does tend to be more direct interactive. And, one that always comes to mind for me was Mini Express, which came out a few years ago from Mo Ideas. It was a game that when we first saw a prototype, it was a 3 to 5 player game specifically. And then they added a couple of two-player versions, one with a bot and one that was direct two players. And it changed the whole complexion of the game, because I remember in the 3 to 5 player game, you were kind of doing your own thing, and it had this big turn order issue where if one player was playing weakly, it was the player after them who would really benefit. But then they got this two-player version, and you would take 2 actions per turn, and it would have a direct impact on what was left for your opponent. And it was perfectly set up for two players. And you see that across all of the well-designed two-player games.
Yeah. Like Seastead, that was our top games a few years ago, and then it's two players.
Yep. Orion Duel was one that I had very high in my list of games from last year. Little abstract one that had very nice, clever placement rules.
So these games also are the ones that were released this year or about to be released early next year or sometime next year, or you can pre-order, or Kickstarter was already out there. And if we have further videos for these games, we'll link it below in the description. So now, without further ado, we're going to start with the game that is the least complex to the one that most complex according to us. Let's go, Tarrant.
So this is the first one we're looking through. This is a game called This Bed Is Mine.
It's from Broadway Toys?
Yes, and this is, from a rules standpoint, it's incredibly simple, and it really calls back to classic two-player area control game like Go.
Yeah.
But in a modern sort of way. So the game comes with a grid, and it's cats versus dogs.
And that's the box, actually part of the game component.
Yep.
And how many players does it play, Tara?
2, like all of them.
Kidding.
So each player you'll either be cats or dogs, and you'll have all these cat or dog pieces shaped like digital clock numbers. And essentially the game is you're going to go back and forward placing these pieces into the grid, trying to fence off areas. And you can either fence them off with player pieces or with the edge. And at the end of the game, which areas you control is based on adding up the numbers that you have on the border. So if there's a little section of 5 squares that's been fenced off, you look at every cat or dog that is joined up against that section, add up the numbers, and whoever has the highest sum wins that area. If it's a 1-by-1 area, you don't score it, and whoever gets the most area by the end wins.
As simple
There
as
you go.
that. Yeah, but
That's the rules in 30 seconds.
well, we don't need a how to play video from Tarrant then. That's basically it.
That is basically it.
So what you saw before is just a one-player piece, and the other player has got obviously different color to differentiate. But that was just one little thinky game. It has got a bit of a spatial rotation, so you're gonna have to make sure that you cover all bases. And if you like Go or not really chess, but all of this is probably like chess because it's 2-player. Why don't we include chess? Because it's not just came out.
This one is very much like Go. You can see it's been inspired by Go in that area control placement sort of way. This game gives you a really different way of thinking about spaces because of how you're putting these pieces in. You've got to try to put pieces in that will stop the other player from having space to put their pieces in. And you can build up a large section, but then if you can squeeze something in between, you can cut it into 2 sections, and maybe if it's with a big number, you can win both of them. So it's a really clever game, really different way of thinking. Quite different.
The next game, just a notch higher in complexity, is Agent Avenue by Nerd Lab Games. This was an Essen 2024 release, and it has got some cute animal pictures and artwork. This is about spy living in a neighborhood of spies.
It's an I split you choose type of game, so you're trying to collect sets of different agents who can help your spy, and as you get sets of good ones, they're going to help you move around the board to capture the other player.
Capture.
Or you can get sets of bad ones who will send you backwards and push you more into the path of your opponent. So every turn, one player is going to play 1 card face up and 1 card face down, and then the other player picks which of those 2 they want to add to their area. So it's all about picking. It's a little bit bluffy. You're trying to pick the right set of cards at the right time to drive your opponent into leaving you the better card.
Yeah, that's not easy because all you need is to capture your opponent moving forward, and you don't want to move backward, but it's like I split you choose where I think there's a lot of bluffing in here.
I think the game comes into its own in the advanced mode. So there is a simple mode where what I described is everything. There's an advanced mode where there's also some spaces on the track where you want to exactly land, because that will let you gain a power card, an upgrade card from the display, and that can throw some extra things into the game. So in that way, you end up with this double bluff type of thing where you might want to move backwards a little bit because that's the best way for you to get the card you need from that black market. Right. Or you might just want to race forwards. So it adds this extra dimension.
And you would like this game if you like a bit of a bluffing, you like card play, you like a little bit of tug of war, pull and push. So, and with cute artwork, so this is the game for you.
It's a very quick playing game. It's a good filler. You could play multiple games across an hour. Very quick.
The third one in complexity level is Bauer by Cranial Creations, and this was also an Essen 2024 release. It's a tile placement where you're trying to collect objective, kind of like secret at the start. Eventually, the players may or may not know to have the most of certain things.
Yeah, it's you're drafting domino tiles from a display of 3, so a very simple tile gaining mechanism, and building it out into a 6x4 grid on your side of the board. But you end up with an opposite 6x4 grid on the other side. And so, as you say, you're trying to do 2 things. You're trying to get the most of a certain type of feature, could be like red feathers or blue flowers or something in the column. So you want more on your side than the other player has on the other side. And there are 3 types of landscapes, and you're trying to make a big cluster of those on your own side. Yeah. And so those are the 2 main objectives you're facing. The trick is that you only know the objectives for 3 of the 6 columns. So you know what you're trying to get the majority of in 3 of the columns that you can see on your side. The other player can see the other 3. And so you've got to try to deduce what they're trying to win.
Yeah, and then you
Which
win as
means-
well. You
yeah.
get points if you beat that player in number.
Yep. And so the trick there is you want to try to not be obvious about what you're getting the most of. And then there's this little trick in there as well where if you win that column 1-0, you have one of them, the other player has 0, you get double points. And you really only get 5 or 6 points each in the game. So that's a big twist in the game. It's probably the biggest twist that makes it, really gives it that 2-player edge.
Yes, there are some bonus tiles you can get as well. But that's it. If you like tile placement, drafting, open drafting at simple level, and Barra is probably for you. I'm a space penguin in this fourth one, King of Tokyo Duel.
Yes, this is the first one we're talking about, which is a 2-player version of a well-known game. And it's a very fine adaptation, I think.
Yeah.
It uses the dice chucking engine that King of Tokyo has had over a long time. And you end up with this, you've got this board that has this little tug of war going. So you can smash buildings, which I think came from the New York version, or you can gain the Hollywood stars type of thing. And as you roll the dice, if you get a triple or more of those ones, you're going to be pushing or pulling back or forward to try to get to one side to win. You can also attack your opponent or heal yourself the way you can in the other King of Tokyo games. And purchase upgrade cards and so on as usual. So it is a fairly faithful adaptation to the game you would know. But it does feel 2-player, and it feels like it has been optimized into more of an even game and a well-curated game than King of Tokyo and King of New York.
Yeah.
I mean, those games are big, fun, party dice chuckers. This one, they've added a couple of things, like you gain money for free at the end of each round if you don't buy anything.
Correct, yeah.
And then one card in the market is cheaper than the others, and they slide along. So it's got these couple of things to add these elements to the game more quickly, to make sure everyone is buying cards to get that thing going. And I really like that they've made those tweaks.
I think you said everything that I was going to say, Tarrant. Well done. Yes.
I should stay more quiet and give you a chance.
No. I give you permission to stay, to read my mind and then say it. So I really enjoy this. It's dice checking, and then with each player has got their own slightly asymmetric powers as well. And the fact that there are ways to win, the track or the health. Obviously, almost no downtime. I mean, to play a game, all 2-player games is probably, but I remember when playing King of Tokyo, the original, there are some downtime about it, especially if you play with a lot of people. It's not too bad, but this is the game if you like dice rolling, if you like King of Tokyo, the original, but want to play 2 players.
Yeah. It's not chess. It's not a meeting of the minds.
No.
It's sit down and have a dice chucking adventure. But yeah, it is a good adaptation.
The 5th game is Balconia by Red Cat. This is kind of like partly released. They're looking for distribution partners outside their region. I think a few have agreed to distribute this, so I would say that early next year they should have more of these, and they definitely show this at Essenspiel.
Yes, and much like Agent Avenue, this is an I Split You Choose game. And I've always found that to be a mechanism that works a lot better at 2 players actually than higher player count, because again, it gives you that direct. When you're trying to split for more people, it's harder to split. You're just trying to generally make something good, but in this one, you're directly looking at what your opponent would find good and trying to make a call based on that.
I'll give you an example. This is about planning, right? You like to plan. So this is the direct way to plan for your move and then the opponent's move to hate draft. So select the best for yourself ideally, and then the least best for your opponent. For example, Azul. Azul is not a 2-player game, but it plays great at 2 players.
It does.
I mean, you directly affect the other player's choice by choosing certain things, certain pieces, not the other ones. So Anyways, we're back to Balconia.
Back to Balconia. So
Ta-da!
you've been seeing this fun little 3D thing in front of us here. We are building up opposite sides of an apartment block. And we've got this Lazy Susan, and that's pretty helpful because you want to be constantly keeping in mind what your opponent has built.
This does not come with the game, by the way. The Lazy Susan doesn't.
So there's all these little apartment cubes here, and one of them's going to be selected at random every turn. And then one player is going to choose, they're going to look at the 4 sides of it and choose which 2 sides they're happy to have. And then I'll give that to the opponent.
It's got this color there, so the pink color or the blue color.
Yep.
Which size?
So if Stella was playing the blue side, Stella would now have to put one of those, would have to put this somewhere in the apartment block with one of the 2 blue sides I've given her facing her side.
Yes.
And every one of these tiles has features on it and has a scoring objective on it. And your aim is to place them in such a way that you're going to score more points than your opponent. But you have a lot of control over, you are basically controlling half of the placements on the opponent's side. So you actually, it's rare to see an I split you choose where so much power is given to the chooser.
And it is like, I would say a 3D tile placement, because technically it's tile placement, but it's like putting it there. But then this, like with I split you choose, is so great.
Yeah, it's genuinely 3D. Well,
it's
2D in 2 planes because you need to consider your side and what that means for the opponent's side.
And it's not a gimmick; it is the mechanic, like literally. Like this is handy to have. This I would recommend to have Lazy Susan type of thing. So if you want to see,
if you want to play, play where you can constantly look and optimize your placement, you're going to be wanting to flip this set of balconies around regularly, or you can try to play by memory and just say, all right, I don't know for sure what's on your side anymore, but I have to remember and then make a placement based on that. Either way works.
So you would like this if you like tile placement, you like I split, you choose, and you like something different, and then great table presence, Balconia.
Yep, table presence, and as you say, not gimmicky table presence. It really works and fits with the game's mechanics.
When we say gimmicky, it doesn't mean bad. I'm just saying that really is part of mechanic. I mean, I don't mind gimmicky, whatever, because I love it. So yes,
but you couldn't play this flat.
Yes, correct. The 6th game in complexity is Fall by Little Rocket Games. I mean, you see that 6, it's not even a complex game, but, because the others are very easy to play, easy to learn.
This is deceptive. There's a few tricky things to think about. So this is, if you look at the components of this game, you're going to instantly get Cascadia vibes. It very much calls to Cascadia. You're going to be drafting pairs of a hex and a token and putting it into a map. But now, instead of building your own little map and scoring objectives, the players are competing to build up a shared map and score different objectives to each other. So everyone's going to have, like in Cascadia, each type of thing is going to have a way of scoring, but your card is going to be different to your opponent's. And so a little bit like Bauer, there's some deduction on what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
While also a bit of aggression in trying to set up the map the way you want it.
The difference is that you can build up to 3 stacks. So you can always put on more tiles on top of another tile, getting rid of whatever token that's above it, except there are a couple of things that you can't really move, like mushroom and frogs. Yeah. But you can build it up to 3 and discarding whatever on top. And when it's on 3, that's it. That's the end. That's locking things up. So not necessarily the thing that you build is going to score you the points at the end of the game. And you need to balance it. Okay, I want it right now, but do you think your opponent will build things on top of it or not? Things like that.
Yeah, and that's where the real 2-player hook of this one comes in. The fact that what you place can be swept out. There are some restrictions on what can be built one on top of the other. So you're not always going to have a tile that will actually destroy what the opponent has built.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you want something to be locked in place, you need to put one of those tiles which locks it in place. And so that has this interesting mechanism, and it also means that the game kind of escalates, because once you get towards the end, those last placements you make are going to be more decisive.
Obviously, the theme is nature, where you're trying to build like a forest or like a habitat for these different animals, trying to score the objectives. So I think you like this game if you like drafting, you like tile placement. I do love the drafting because it's snake draft. So you draft first, and then I draft the next two, and then I draft. And then the next turn, it'll be like you first, and then me in the middle. So there's always this like, sometimes you just want to, it's a tile, for example, it's one level, you want to just like you can just do it like in one go if you're like a middle draft or something. You know what I mean? So if you like those, you like, just a little bit of bluffing, then Fall is for you.
Yeah. And I would say, so it looks a lot like Cascadia, and it's a smaller box than Cascadia. It packs a lot more think than Cascadia does. Seventh game on our list is Lord of the Rings Duel for Middle-earth by Repress Production. So this was one of the biggest releases of Essen. This is the re-implementation. It's probably about a 70% re-implementation of Seven Wonders Duel, which really, when we look back at two-player modern hobby games, Seven Wonders Duel has probably been the workhorse of that genre for the last decade. Yeah. Not that it was the only two-player game out there, but hitting that light, medium Euro point, it really has been it's kind of the gateway into two-player. It's actually true, game.
From Seven Wonders to Seven Wonders Duel.
Yep. And it was always, I know Seven Wonders Duel was always it was more loved than Seven Wonders on a longer term basis, and it was probably the first. It's probably the only first, something like it. In terms of the two-player game overtaking the original game for popularity, pretty rare, and that was the one that did it.
And as Tarrant said, this is not just re-theme of Seven Wonders Duel, but it has got more mechanics, new mechanics. It still uses the card layered, drafting mechanics from Seven Wonders Duel, but it is the Lord of the Ring. The hobbits got chased by Sauron in the track, which is Middle-earth. So there would be a map, and there's a bit of an area control as well, where you're trying to build have your minions there, have your meeples in there if you control everything. And there's also this chasing scene. It's like, you remember the movie, like Get Chased by Things? This is probably a good one. And this is Sauron. The one player plays as the Sauron person, and the other one is the hobbits. And the hobbit needs to reach the end to win. And then I'm going to put it down here. And Sauron needs to chase the hobbit to win, like so. So this is not the only way to win. As I say, there's this area control type of thing. There's also winning a set of certain cards as well.
Yep, so it replicates, or almost replicates, what was a science victory in Seven Wonders Duel. The military victory is now, it's not just a dichotomous track, it is the area control on the map. You're trying to have something in every area, so a little bit more dimension to that. And there's no longer a victory point win in the game. It's all the cards that used to give you a lot of victory points now give you placement on the map. And at the end of the game, if no one has won off a immediate condition, you'll win based on control of the map.
So obviously, if you are a fan of Lord of the Rings, and if you like Seven Wonders Duel, you like this. And also, if you are not familiar with any of those, which is fine, then you like it if you like drafting cards. If you like to plan your strategy, but then change it midway, maybe if you see that the opponents are going to win that way, because you need to stop your opponents from winning. So you need to see what your opponents are doing and then change your strategy to stop, or really push on your strategy trying to win that way. The only thing that you may need to watch out for if you don't like top deck cards thing. So because by refilling one card, it might refill random cards that opponents straight away or immediately will be able to, gain a lot of things out of it, then just be wary of that. So if you don't like that, then this might not be for you, and there are 9 other games here in this video.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of an interesting reflection of the time, because it's a 10-year-old game effectively that's been 70% re-implemented for this. All of the more recent games that we've got here, it takes that element of luck away, and I almost see it as you compare it with when Catan first came out and was such a popular game. It had this dice rolling element, which I think a lot of people moved on from over time, and it does sometimes give the game a bit of a bad retrospective reputation, whether deserved or undeserved. And Seven Wonders Duel and then Lord of the Rings Duel, for me, does that with the 2-player game as well, because there's a lot more random things that will come up like that in this game compared with the more recent designs that we're going through. So I just think it's an interesting observation.
Yeah, but this is also the game that has got that, well known for its pyramid card draft. So if you like that, hey, this might be for you. One thing I want to mention as well, it's very important, then it's quite different than Seven Wonders Duel, is that when you build wonders in Seven Wonders Duel, you gain it mainly for points. But in this one, you gain it mainly for tactical benefit. So you still need to collect the icons to have like the cards. It's from the cards that you collect, but then this is the coins and building your castle, having presence in certain regions. So slightly different there.
Yeah. It's also a bit more forgiving because you can no longer hoard all of the resources of one type to bleed money from your opponent. The cost, if you don't have a resource, is fixed instead of escalating.
The 8th game is Flatiron by Ludonova, and this is by the famous duo designers Shay and Isra, who designed Red Cathedral, White Castle, and so on.
Yes, and we're really getting out of the crossover space and into very much the Euro space here.
Yes.
So the last 3 games are pretty much for Euro players and for heavier players only. Flatiron is...
Heavier? I like this, but I'm not heavy. Excuse me. For heavier complexity players.
So Flatiron is a medium sort of game, and it's an engine build and timing sort of game, and it's a worker placement game. So there's 5 worker placement spaces, and the 2 players will be moving their workers around into one of the empty spaces, and you'll be using it to buy cards that will build up for action spaces, or to activate those action spaces, and you'll roll through the actions. And collectively, kind of like Fall, when you're building something common and the timing is a key part of it, here you're trying to build pillars and then floors onto the Flatiron building. And you get points as you build that up, and you get points for some other things.
Obviously, the worker placement space is blocking. It's continuous worker placement. So when you do that, you can even gain the cards, or you can activate the engine on your tableau. Now, the engine building is not... It's different than Everdell, where you can just have, things or other ones that get you unlimited things, but you can only build 3 on certain location. So that really limits what you activate, what you focus on. It's kind of like a worker placement engine build, so you have to activate it. It's not like automatic.
It's a little bit like Wingspan in that way.
Yeah, yes. So you need to make sure that you either spread your engine so you can activate it in different locations, so when your opponent blocks that area, you can still activate it, or you can just have 2 powerful ones. You can just jump back and forth if opponents block you and such, and you can still activate your engine.
Yeah, it gives you that real ability to you've got enough time to pivot as the game is going on to add strong actions where you need them. There's some end-game objectives that you have to race for as well. And there's a few other little mechanisms like bonus newspaper tokens where you can swap out actions that are commonly available to the ones that suit you the best. So it has a lot of those really nice 2-player timing in particular, but timing and interaction features.
Yes, on top of that, though, there's also like negative or positive points that you can collect per tableau. So there are 4 of them. If you gain like the cards that are really powerful, you're gonna get negative points at the end of the game. So stack all of them into one space or something like that. So just like, all right, this column is going to be just negative points, and then the rest will give you positive points, and they're pretty decent points as well.
Yeah, and that bit has. That may be more of a personal Euro type of feel about it, but you can also, see if someone's trying to make something stronger, or you can say, all right, that's a weak card, it's going to drive them to negative points, I don't have to get it as quickly, so it all comes together.
Yeah, so if you like games with shared incentives, worker placement, engine build, and there you go, Flatiron. Sitting in number 9 in complexity, kick-started recently and almost fulfilled, is Everdell Duo, which is the 2-player version of Everdell. Ta-da! So it plays cooperatively and competitively.
Yes, and I guess in the spirit of this video, it's kind of the competitive mode that we're talking about. And it's probably it's more tricky than Everdell. Everdell, you're out there, you're building your tableau. This one adds some new restrictions and some of those 2-player, edgy moments that you don't get out of the basic Everdell. And really, the 2 major ones are that the players are competing or sharing the amount of actions they can take. So across a round, you'll get 6 turns. There's only 6 times that players could play a card, and 6 times that players could do a worker placement action. And there's also a general action that lets you're tracking these by moving 2 markers across the board. And you can take a general action where you just draw a card and you move one of those markers, and it takes away the opponent's ability to do that sort of action. So you need to be very carefully thinking about, if I need to play a card, do I have to get it done earlier, or can I take a slightly weak action just to make it impossible for my opponent to do the action they want?
Oh, very brutal. Like, I got caught. Like, I didn't realize this at the start. The first time we played this, I didn't realize that it could be really brutal. I was like, okay, I'm ready to gain these resources so I can play this card. I'm like, no, I can't play cards anymore. Or, I have to wait for the next round and so on, and then behind on fulfilling objectives. So it's really brutal, and it really captures the Everdellness, but in very brutal way, in terms of not only you have to really think what you want to do, but what opponents are doing and time your actions right.
Yeah. And I'm going to say, all right, maybe it's not super brutal, but if you do get the time, there are actions you can take that do really stifle your opponent.
That's correct,
if the timing suits.
Which you did, usually. Well, that's just the way it is, right? So
it feels a bit tighter and quicker. Like, it's a more compact game, and there are moments of, I think, using like cards that accumulate victory points has a bigger impact on play than it does in basic Everdell. Everdell kind of sprawls. This one's a little bit more targeted, but it plays really nicely. And I do, after having, we've played Everdell many times over the journey since it's been released, and I like that this is a more compact and more thinky version of it. So it's really nice for, I think, if you play a lot of Everdell as a couple, this fits a really good point.
Definitely. Well, and if you play, you are feeling like you want to work with each other, then there's always the cooperative mode, which is also lovely. It's great. It's only find it here. You don't find cooperative mode in the normal Everdell, so check it out. Everdell Duo. The last but not least, number 10 game, which is also the heaviest in complexity, is soon followed by the Game Builders. Also another Essen 2024 release.
Yeah, and I mean, you think back a couple of years, if it wasn't a war game, you really couldn't release a 2-player game in a box of this size. It was kind of something we saw over the last 10 years. You always had to have them in those small boxes. This is almost a full Euro size game. Not quite, but it's almost there. And this
it's crunchy.
It's a crunchy game. And it is, at its core, it's very simple. You're farming, you're drafting cards, building them into columns. As you add a card to a column, you activate everything that's in it. As the columns get bigger, you get more stuff. So you're building up engines that way. You also get benefits and points for filling in rows to make sure you don't over-specialize. And what you're doing with all of that is you're getting resources and you're spending them on contracts, and the contracts give you points and give you upgrades.
It sounds all generic, but...
Very generic, simple Euro at that part of the core.
Yeah, well, that's not just that.
So where this comes in with the two-player mode is, and it harks back to that Seven Wonders discussion, this, when we're drafting cards, it almost completely eliminates the top decking ability, because every card that comes into play
Available.
has some sort of price, and those prices are set by the players. Every turn you've got 9 cards to choose from. There'll be 3 above your own board, 3 above your opponent's board, and 3 in the middle. And then if you get one from your own board, you replace it with one from the middle. So you'll always have 3 in each of those locations. When you take a card to your own area, you set its price. So you are paying resources from your own supply onto that card. Then if you end up taking that card, those resources are gone. If your opponent buys that card, they have to give you exactly the resources you put on it, and you get those plus the ones you put. So it's about taking, if you take a card that your opponent wants, you need to set a price that makes it worth both of your whiles.
Yeah.
And that is a big, that's very much two-player mind games sort of play. And
Mind game, yeah. It's correct. Plan ahead. So I just love the idea of, you know, yes, you have access, but then do you want to take that card because you want that card and then price it lower? Well, there's minimum cost at some of the cards and price it lower so that you can afford it. But if you price it too low, then your opponent might be able to just snatch it and paying it really like next to nothing. Yeah. Or you get something and then price it really high and then hoping that your opponents will get it, but they won't, and then you lose all the resources.
Yep. And you can, so there is a way to top deck a card from that's just come off the middle, but it's going to cost you 3 resources above minimum. So puts a big price on that as well. Gives you all these different options, and it just becomes this, very clever economy. You've also got limited storage for your resources as well, so you have to manage all of that inside the capacities of your storage.
Exactly. Make it really tight, make it like very two-player oriented. And if you like that crunchy Euro game where resources are limited, where every actions are tied and you need to calculate and you need to mind game or meta with the other player, then that's gonna follow. And that's all, Tarrant. That's all, everyone. The 10 top games for 2 players in 2024-2025. Which game do you think, or games that you think you would be interested the most? Or is there any other games that you could say or share that you think is worth mentioning here that released recently and great for 2 players?
Yeah, there's no doubt there's something in that selection for everybody.
So let us know which one of those are the most intriguing looking, or maybe you have played those. I mean, like, it hasn't released, surely a lot of people have played some of these games or most of these games. And thank you so much for watching. If you have any suggestions, comments, everything, please let us know in the comments below. Until then, otherwise, have a great day. See you next time.